Is it possible that the entity that most of us have blamed for the downfall of college sports, specifically college football, could actually end up being the one to get it back on the rails and save it? That's right. We're talking about ESPN. Could ESPN actually save college football? In this episode, which is brought to you by Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law and BetUS Online, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you the reasons why ESPN could potentially save college football. And we'll have that conversation right after this word from one of those sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident, are fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top-shelf college football news and analysis around West Virginia, the Big 12, and conference realignment. Thank you for tuning in. On tap in today's episode, we're talking about how ESPN, the entity that most of us, Big 12, well, heck, most of us in general, have been angry with or not happy with the last few years because we feel like they have really been pushing a lot of this conference realignment. We feel like they've been pushing a lot of the changes in college sports, where they're making the rich richer and the poor poorer in college sports. But in an article done by John Wilner, he makes some great points as to how the ESPN might actually be the savior of college football right now, or at least they have the opportunity to be. And we're going to talk about why that is. Now, John Wilner, he wrote a lot of articles back when the four corner schools in the Big 12 were talking, right? He put out a lot of stuff that had Big 12 fans like myself a little bit angry, a little bit upset. We felt like it was a lot of anti-Big 12 rhetoric. And to be honest, he ended up being wrong about a lot of the stuff. But again, it's not necessarily his fault. He had to report what he was being given by his sources. But that being said, what Wilner come out with in this article is really, really good stuff. And I'm going to leave a link to the article in the description box. But first, we all know the background here. I've talked about it here on this show. The SEC and the Big Ten are looking to expand the college football playoff to at least 14 teams, and B, they're wanting to have at least 4 automatic qualifiers from their respective leagues get in every year. They're wanting to add more non-conference games between their teams, the SEC and the Big Ten teams, so they can have more marquee matchups in the regular season, potentially even more bowl matchups in the postseason outside of the college football playoff, because they're wanting more marquee matchups on television to try and bring more revenue in for their conferences and thus their teams. It's all tied together. SEC may even go to non-conference games. It's all tied together, and it's all about adding revenue. But here's a quote from John Wilner from this article. Again, I'll leave a link to the article, but he says, and I quote, "Multiple industry sources have told the Hotline," and that's the Wilner Hotline. That's what he calls his weekly article or daily article. "Multiple industry sources have told the Hotline in recent days that ESPN is not necessarily eager for changes and might be staunchly opposed, which could create a most interesting dynamic." Let's remember, ESPN is the only rights holder to SEC content right now. They own the SEC network, and they show all SEC games on their networks. So they have a lot of skin in the game here, and they own the college football playoff too. They own the rights to the college football playoff through 2031. So they have a lot of skin in the game with whatever changes take place with the SEC. Of course, Fox is the primary rights holder for the Big Ten, so they are a huge stakeholder too, but not as much as ESPN, because ESPN, again, like I said, owns the rights to the college football playoff. Now, would Greg Sankey be willing to piss off ESPN and ram this down their throat even if they oppose it? That's an interesting thought and question. Is he really brave enough or bold enough or dumb enough to do that, however you want to look at it? It'll be interesting. But we're going to give here later in the show, I'm going to give you 4 reasons based on Wilner's article that ESPN is opposed, or could be opposed rather, to this college football playoff expansion proposal that the SEC and ESPN or the SEC and Big Ten are bringing forward. Now, let's set the groundwork by reminding you that ESPN is not obligated to pay more money if the college football playoff expands from 12 to 14 teams. That's already been agreed on. The money they're making right now is based on 12 teams or 14 teams. Money won't change. Now, if it goes to 16, it does trigger a renegotiation potentially, but Wilner seems to think that's less likely to happen. So if we go to 14 teams, there's no more money. So why do it, right? Why do it? Well, here's the reason. The SEC and Big Ten are looking for ways to increase revenue for their schools because of the house settlement money and the rev sharing and all this. In order to do that, they want to play more regular season games against each other. Have more marquee matchups, like I mentioned. The Ohio State versus Alabama, Texas versus Michigan, Penn State versus Oklahoma, whatever. You name the marquee matchup, they're wanting more of those games each and every year in the regular season. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you're playing Big Ten teams more often, or in the Big Ten's case, SEC teams more often, then that's more opportunities to lose in the non-conference, which could hurt your ability to get into the college football playoff the way it's currently formatted. Therefore, they're proposing, hey, give each of our leagues 4 automatic qualifiers. That way, if we lose that regular season game to a Big Ten team or an SEC team, it doesn't hurt us. We still get our top 4 teams in regardless because it's based on their conference performance, not their non-conference performance. Now, it might affect their seeding or they get seeded in the playoff, but they would still get in the playoff. That's the thinking the SEC and Big Ten have here, right? It also would mean the SEC would likely go to 9 conference games because the Big Ten would not want to agree to this scheduling agreement unless the SEC is playing 9 games as well. Again, adding one more likely a more difficult game to each SEC team's schedule. So they're not going to want that to hurt them and their chances of getting in the CFP in the eyes of the committee. So you take the power away from the committee. Then the only thing the committee has to determine is seeding at that point, right? They don't determine who gets in because of the automatic qualifiers in this case. You play tougher non-conference games, more marquee non-conference games in hopes of boosting your revenue from your TV partners. Are you looking for a brand new sports book? If so, look no further than our good friends over at BetUS Online. Right now, with promo code YouTube150, you get a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. That's right, 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit. You also get a 125% sign-up bonus on your next 2 deposits up to $2,000. That's with promo code YouTube150 to get that 150% bonus today. If you do play, please make sure to play responsibly. And remember, you must be 18 years of age or older to play. Now, let's get back to the show. Now, why would ESPN be against this? Well, Wilner lays out 4 solid reasons in this article, and I'm going to speak to each of these. But the number one reason is you're alienating a lot of fans in a lot of big markets. You're alienating like 75% of the college football fans, basically. And you're alienating fans in markets like Phoenix, like Salt Lake City, like Kansas City, basically the whole state of North Carolina, because the ACC wouldn't be included in this. You're basically alienating the entire state of Virginia, your Virginia Tech and your UVA fans. I don't even have it listed here, but you're talking about alienating fans in Denver, Colorado, which is another large market. There are markets all across the country that you would be alienating in college football fans across the country who may not watch these games because they're going to be frustrated because their teams aren't having the same opportunity. And ESPN, according to Wilner and the article by Ross Dellinger last week, ESPN, a lot of the folks at ESPN do not want that to happen. And remember, ESPN is the primary rights holder to the ACC deal as well. So would they really want to hurt the ACC just to help the SEC a little bit? It's food for thought, right? Maybe they wouldn't. Now, maybe you disagree and you think they would and they don't really care about the ACC. And if that's the case, leave your thoughts in the comment section, please. Now, the number 2 reason ESPN may not be happy with this proposal from the SEC and Big Ten is it may impact viewership of the conference title games if they even exist, and the play-in games that might occur. If automatic qualifiers get passed, if they decide to go that route, then these conferences may start having play-in games to determine who gets in the playoff. So you might have 4, 6, even 8 teams potentially playing over a course of a couple weekends to determine who gets in the playoff from these conferences, which means more games competing with the NFL, because that late in the year, the NFL is playing games on Thursday night. They're playing games on Saturday. They're playing games on Sunday, and they're playing games on Monday. So where do you fit the games in without competing with the NFL? Because if you go to 14, and you know, the playoff games will be competing with the NFL too if you go to 14 teams. You're adding a couple more games in there that would have to compete with the NFL. So would the viewership even be there and be justified for adding these extra games in? Would it really benefit the networks? If they have to increase more money for these conferences, where's the payoff at? Maybe it's not worth it to them, because they know going head-to-head with the NFL is a losing battle. The third reason that ESPN might be opposed, you're likely just going to get more blowout games. You go to 14 teams or even 16, and if they go that route, you may just get more blowout games in the early rounds, which equals lower demand. The blowout games are going to get less viewership, which means lower demand, which means less money from your sponsors, which means why would you do it? Is it really worth it to ESPN to do this? Maybe it's not in their mind. And then the fourth and final reason, for me, this is one of the big ones, maybe the biggest one, is it devalues the regular season. Why in the world, if let's just throw out a theoretical scenario. Let's just say you're halfway to 3/4 of the way through the college football season, and you're a team like Mississippi State or Vanderbilt or heck, anybody, Kentucky, name any team in the SEC or even the Big Ten for that matter. And all of a sudden you realize my team has no shot of getting in the college football playoff at this point. Bowl games don't mean anything anymore. They've been devalued. So why should I even watch? The top 4 teams are getting in regardless if they win or not. And even if you do add those extra non-conference games with the more marquee matchups between the Big Ten and SEC, if they don't matter, why watch them? That's what I can't wrap my head around. Why would you want to add games to a schedule that really don't even impact your postseason? Yeah, it impacts your seeding, but it doesn't impact whether you get in or not. I don't want to watch a game that has less meaning. I want it to have more meaning. Right now, every single regular season game in college football has meaning. If you have automatic qualifiers to the playoff and less at-large bids, the games have less meaning, period. Across the board. And these networks are paying hundreds of millions of dollars to these conferences for these games. And if you have fans losing interest in them halfway through the season, that's not going to help them at all. Now, is there enough interest in the other games that have been added to offset that? I don't know. Again, I'm not a media executive. Can't answer that question. But according to Wilner's article, there are a lot of folks at ESPN who seem to think it's not. So, but I want to hear what you think in the comment section. Do you think ESPN is against this move, or do you think really behind the scenes they're pushing for this and backing this move? I want to hear what you think in the comment section. Also want to give a shout out real quick to my random VIP member shout outs of this episode. If you want to become a VIP member of the channel, hit the join button below or check it out on my channel homepage or in the description box. But the VIP member shout outs of this show are H. Bar Farkle, Tom Reinhart, Hellbilly, Timbo, and Houston Cougars, Germany. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for helping me keep the lights on. Thank you to my channel sponsors again, Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law, and BetUS Online. Thank them for helping me keep the lights on as well. You can support me for free. If you can't be a member, you can also support me for free by hitting that thumbs up button on this video. If you liked the video and you thought I earned it, please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps that YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe. Help me get to 10,000 subscribers. Please share this with any family or friends that may like West Virginia football, Big 12, conference realignment talk, any of that, because that's what we do here on this channel almost every single day. I really appreciate the support. I appreciate you tuning into this episode. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf and Q Country Roads.